was the bullied child, this is it. So people start gathering into our offices, or we go into their communities, into their homes, to train them on how to do community organizing projects. And this picture, I had to change a lot of the pictures yesterday because they were so happy me being here that they sent me the pictures from their last fundraising. This is their last fundraising this past weekend. This is a flea market, and they have been asking for the community for used goods to sell. So if you were doing your spring cleaning, I put all my clothes away and say, there, here they are. So they had a fundraising event. This is how they fund the group for medicines. They are entitled to medicines? Checked. State government should provide the medicines? Checked. It is recognized, ADD? Checked. Do you have the medicine? No. How do we close that circle? When we started, before you arrived, we were talking about moving from charity into social investment. Children who have been diagnosed with ADD are more prone to become addicts. So instead of putting a lot of money into rehab centers, let's put the money into the group of parents that are dealing with the situation. The doctors will support them pro bono. The doctors will come into their meetings once a week to let them know the news, but the doctor cannot provide the medicine for each one. We have to seek the funding until the money comes. So what's the next step? This is the newest grassroots group we are supporting. They can make the decision to become a nonprofit, which means they have to be tax deductible, do their tax returns, blah, 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 or stay as a grassroots group for as long as they need, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and we will support them. We will be their financial bridge for tax deduction invoices and things like that for social investors, previously known as donors. So this kind of groups are the groups that are really changing the face of the community because they are deciding what's best for them and how much they need to solve it. This is the old versus the new approach. At the beginning of my presentation, I was saying that at some point we, as Mexicans, got tired of blaming. It was, oh, we have such a bad luck. God is to blame. Fate, I have such blah, blah, blah. The Americans took half of the land. At some point, someone said, enough. We're not getting anywhere by blaming. So a lot of what we do is coming to terms to accept our community, our border reality, and saying, this is what it is. This is ADD. We now have a name for it. Let's move forward. So the old approach, blame the government, blame poverty. There is a lack of specialists in the community. For example, for those with Alzheimer, we will see later, there's no a geriatric doctor. There's no so what do? We'll see a little bit later. We cannot bring someone and hire someone and put it here into the public system, but there are other 100 things we can do to fix it. Not enough, if any, support from the public education system, health insurance, public health system, and medication, and community acceptance. Going back to the not enough, if any, support from the public education system, we can be the bad guys. We as the community foundation, this can be the bad guy of the picture. Why? Because I don't have a child, and I don't have to deal with the principal of the school. I don't have public job. I don't have to have my pretty face saying thank you to the mayor every morning. I'm in the middle of everything. So what do? When one of the children, the Down syndrome child or the ADD child, is rejected from school, rejected in a way that they cannot reject it officially because it's against the law, but they can just put him in a corner, and the parents will say, you know what? My child is like another chair in the room. He can pee on himself, and the teacher won't let him go out. And then he becomes bullied by peeing on himself and blah, blah, blah. So what do? We gather the media. We have a very close relationship with the media. 20 years ago in Mexico, the media will only publish what they were allowed to publish. Now with social media, we tell the reporters, we don't need you. We will post it right away on live time, and it's up to you to have your paper empty or your radio time empty. We don't need you. You need us. That community approach has opened the conversation saying, I understand that you cannot cover our presentations because we don't pay you. We will never pay you. We don't need to pay you. So after 10 years of doing this, the media really comes to us when we call them. We have every personal number from the reporters, the local reporters. So what do? We gather them, we gather the ADD moms, and we say, well, would you please tell them that some schools, we're not naming anyone, are not accepting the children. You don't want to be that principal. don't want to be that teacher. We just let the community know and the government, the public education system know that some schools are not taking the children here. And if they are taking them, they are putting them in a corner. By next morning, 8 a.m., we will have a call from the education secretary say, where is this happening? I will give you the mom's number, but please be very careful because we don't want this mother to be bullied by the other teachers, etc. This is a community issue. This is not about Roberto or about Miguel. This is about the ADD or the Asperger or the autistic or the Down syndrome community. It's not the child. It's the whole community, the whole family around them. So the new approach is join the group. Join a grassroots group. If you don't have one, make it happen. We will help you. You can use our phone, you can use our car, we will call people, etc. We will let the community know what you're looking for. But do not expect support for you. We will never have enough checks for as many Robertos or as many Miguels or Juanitas that we have in the community. Find a specialist through social media and the web. The autistic parents found a PhD autistic doctor 10 years ago through social media. The friend of a friend of a friend. He was hired by local government and paid for 3 years to stay in Nogales and develop a lot of the research that was needed among the autistic organization. So there is someone on the other side of the web waiting to be hired, waiting to be listened to, waiting to let us know all of the information they have. We just have to click to connect. Make a budget. When you are under the level of poverty, it's very difficult to make a budget. We call it in Mexico to live day by day. In the States, is paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes there's not even a paycheck to paycheck week. It's about how much money you made today selling newspapers or in a taco stand. So making a budget with very little is still making a budget. The budget can have as many zeros as possible. If it is a federal budget, you get lost in the sea of zeros. And you come to terms and you say, excuse me, how much of those zeros were put into the special education system? Because we got nothing. So don't tell me you put this amount of millions into the country. I just want to know how much of that money was into our community. If every community has the courage to stand up and say things like that, because in my parents' age, you wouldn't dare. No one would print it. Right now, anyone who is in high school, elementary school, middle school, can take a picture and post it. There we go. That's the new way of democracy. Seek alliances. We cannot do this by yourself. You will never survive by yourself. We have to be strong. So for those of you who arrive a little bit late, I was telling my one and only member at the beginning of the conference, he was right here on time, that in Mexico it's mandatory to do 480 hours of social service in order to graduate from public or private university or college. So those students and those universities need us. When I was in college many, many years ago, we will be hired by the governmental offices and make us serve coffee and do copies, etc., for our social service hours. And at some point they will say, get out, I will sign any papers that you need. Not anymore. Many of the specialists we have now, the autistic specialists, were students 7 years ago that were taking it to do their 480 hours. And then they became so good that they were hired. So the nonprofits are now creating jobs. That's the full circle. You cannot beg forever. When you are a nonprofit in Mexico and many other countries, you are in the red always. And someone told us that was okay. It's not okay. If you cannot pay for your cell phone and for gas, you cannot move forward. You cannot call the people in the grassroots groups. So in order to succeed, we have to have a budget and seek alliances and come public about the illness, whatever that illness might be. By illness, I don't only mean health issues. When there's a lot of corruption, that's an illness of the community. We have to make it better. DGB, it's grassroots developments for us, Desarrollo de Grupo de Base. Manitas, this is an organization of mothers of deaf children. When you have a deaf children and you are poor, you are in trouble. If you have a deaf child but you are middle class and upper, you have a small problem. The lower you go into the income level, the bigger the problem becomes. Because the doctor, the public health system will diagnose the child as deaf. Thank you very much, we cannot provide the hearing aid. the child will have a leg amputated or the grandmother because of diabetes. They amputate the leg, there is no therapy, there is no prosthetic. So, how do we close the full circle and make people going back to work if you don't have what it takes to go back? So, this group of mothers started a group of deaf children. Manitas means little hands. At some point, we thought they were always going to be little. Some of them are 20 years old and they're still called manitas, little hands. They have become so famous all over the city. They are probably the jewel of the crown regarding disabilities. This grassroots group is now supporting other parents around the country on how to deal with a deaf child when you are very poor. How do you organize yourself? How do you invite the specialists to come to you? How does special education come into the picture? How do you have people hire deaf people? With deaf people, it's a little bit easier because there are no mental issues with them. They're just deaf. And at some point, we are all going to be deaf. If we grow to be very old, at some point, many of us here are going to become deaf. So that's a reality. This group decided that they bring their children to therapy after school and they cannot back to their homes and come back. That means paying twice for the bus fare and also losing a lot of time. If the therapy is an hour and a half, by the time you get home, the child is already out. So they stay around the facility. This facility is built by a piece of land that is donated by the government. We seek the building with local building constructions, and then they run it. It's theirs. All the title is in their names. We don't own anything as a community foundation. So these mothers decided they wanted to take sewing classes. Why? Because there's always something to be fixed at home, and you can use that hour while the child is in therapy. All you need is the sewing machines, tables, and chairs, and training, of course. So a teacher from the community was hired to provide the lessons into it. The machines were a donation from people who had an older machine and wanted to buy a new one, etc. That's how the group started. And if it's Christmas season or spring parade for children, they are all making costumes for everyone, selling them from home, earning an income. And that's because the group is very strong. It allows some of the women to be working within the facilities while the child is taking therapy. And it's them who decide. It could have been anything else. They decided they wanted to do sewing, and they keep the sewing machines within the facilities. The teacher herself is from the community. The teacher is the one on the left. She takes 2 buses from where she lives to come and teach for this group. She also teaches another group that we will see later. She has developed a spine problem, very difficult problem, and one of the students said this past summer, I will take her place. I will be the teacher while she recovers. An amazing strength among the group. We didn't call them and say, you know what, we have a new teacher for you. No, they decided how they were going to manage. This is because they have been together for 3 years. But they also have a lot of new people coming on a monthly basis. We are a border town. We have a lot of people who are deported from the United States and a lot of people who are on their way north. Some of them decide they don't want to cross. It's a myth that everyone that comes to the border wants to jump over. A lot of people come to work. The other issue that we have as a community is